Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen. Like Patrick, having no longer any representative role, I feel free to speak. And as suggested by ECHA itself, to focus on some personal feelings and experiences that marked my time at Cefic when REACH was probably the major issue I had to deal with. Being appointed Director General of Cefic in February 2000, I of course started to review with my new colleagues the main issues that Cefic needed to consider for the coming years. And at that time, as Patrick said, the Commission was finalizing the review of existing chemical legislation. So I asked, what is this all about? What do you think may come from this review? And how should Cefic behave regarding the coming new proposals? And it's true that I got some few comments, like, well, it's just an upgrade of the existing legislation. The fundamentals and procedures for risk management and risk assessment are not likely to change, and Cefic should continue to do its business as usual. But having gone through the white paper after its adoption, it became very clear for me that it was definitely not just an upgrade of existing legislation, and that business as usual was definitely not the right attitude for Cefic. Thus, in other words, REACH was providing me with a true opportunity to make radical changes in Cefic. And after all, this is maybe what the board members of Cefic had more or less in mind when changing the Director General. But then I had to take the challenge. With a very limited time to install myself at the head of Cefic and digest all the other issues on its agenda. REACH, as you know, was indeed to be a major revolution in the process of chemicals management, and definitely an immense challenge for all those who will have to deliver according to the regulation, both in industry and among authorities, in particular at ECHA. What Cefic could do to help. In industry, when the researchers bring a new promising technology, you can never rush immediately into building just a new plant and spend hundreds of millions for that. You must start with a so-called piloting phase to get the assurance that the technology can work in full scale. And I thought it would be a good idea to start REACH with such a piloting phase. I'm happy to say that my proposal in this regard were received positively by the Commission, and that Cefic was able to develop real tests of the REACH process involving real substances and real companies, thus helping, I believe, to fine-tune the process. After the adoption of the regulation, and as time was running fast, with the first deadline for registration just 3 years ahead, I had to develop new Cefic tools to help the industry cope with the challenge, and in particular to help the companies elaborate ensemble the so-called one dossier, one substance, one registration. And this was not a minor challenge, how to bring together producers, thus competitors, exchange freely, or almost freely, all relevant data on substances and markets, and not violate competition rules. This gave me again an opportunity to innovate at Cefic and create a business-oriented subsidiary, REACH Centrum, for the management of consortia, and soon later a computer-based system for the management and sharing of data, REACHlink. And I got the same difficulties on that ECHA experience. I had joined Cefic to introduce some innovative changes, and I must recognize that REACH gave me plenty of opportunities and ideas to do that. The REACH challenge was real for industry, but also, as was already said, for the young ECHA. And as a member of the board of ECHA, I was willing to assist as much as I could the management of ECHA to develop a well-working organization. You know how company boards work. It is the responsibility to develop the overall strategy, but for the implementation of it, their main task is to support, help, and of course control the executive management. And maybe I was a bit naive, but I believed, Thomas, that the ECHA board would adopt a strict similar attitude. Yes, the common aim was to make REACH work, but with some subtle differences. While I was always focusing on supporting the executive director to make REACH work, I could observe that some representatives of member states were also keeping their own ideas, including interpreting, and I would say reinterpreting, the regulation. And this led to somewhat surrealistic debates, Thomas. After all, I believe REACH has worked reasonably, and as we celebrate the 10 years anniversary of ECHA, I think it is right to congratulate Herr Danset and all his team for the wonderful achievement they have accomplished. If I was still wearing the costume of Director General of Cefic, I would probably stop there. But I said I can speak freely. If you look to my career, you can notice that my entire professional life was marked by three key words: industry, environment, and Europe. And considering Europe, this goes far beyond my professional activities. I am, and I feel, a firmly convinced European. Thus, I'm often disappointed, and this is an understatement, by the poor image of the EU and its constituencies, and by the negative comments on the EU. I believe we should strongly oppose these anti-EU attitudes, and that EU successes should be much better promoted. REACH and ECHA offer a clear demonstration that the objectives of keeping a strong industry in the EU and protecting the EU citizens can together be obtained through, and only through, a strong and well-functioning EU organization. So let me also take the opportunity of the ECHA anniversary to celebrate what I consider a true European success. Thank you for your attention.